Okay, cool. So I just want to tell you a little bit about my story because I think it's an interesting one, and it's the typical Kiwi underdog story. I started my business with absolutely no resources. I wasn't a trust fund baby. I couldn't call on anybody to get me the funding. And as you're probably learning quite quickly, it takes money and resources to start a business, right? So what I did, I was expecting my company to be mentioned. I have a company called Sleep Drops. I don't know if any of you have heard of it, but we make a range of sleep and stress remedies. And I started it from nothing as a single mum, living underneath my friend's house in an apartment. And it was the global financial crisis. You guys are probably too young to really remember what that meant, but basically 50 companies a day in New Zealand were going bankrupt. I was working as a naturopath and medical herbalist, which even in a booming economy is a tricky job because, you know, lots of people still only believe in mainstream pharmaceutical medicine. And my clients that were doctors and lawyers and all sorts of executives, they were losing their jobs. And so it was very difficult to make money in my industry. And I had previously developed a range of sleeping remedies in my clinic for people that were having trouble sleeping, but I'd never taken them myself. And people think that's quite weird. They're like, what do you mean you'd never taken your own remedy? And it's like, well, I'd never taken my eczema remedy or my asthma remedy either. I hadn't had a sleeping problem previously, and so I had never tried them. But funnily enough, a global financial crisis and being a single parent and the whole economy crashing was enough to even give me insomnia for a short term. So after about 3 weeks of worrying, lying awake thinking, how am I going to, make this work? A friend of mine gave me some herbs. The reason I was in this position was because I had been in business with a friend of mine and they had ended up stealing from me. This is one of the perils of going into partnership. I don't want to put you off at this point, but you do need to have your eyes open. It is tricky when you go into business with people. This friend of mine, we'd known each other for 7 years and we'd open a practice together. And in the end, she ended up taking my herbs, my money, my database, my furniture, and basically any resources I had to continue my job. So I was in a pretty desperate situation, as you can imagine, right? But you might have heard the saying, from desperate times, creativity springs. And it really was the fact that it was so very scary for me that I think that this whole opportunity presented itself. So always look for the bright side. When things are getting bad, try to find the opportunity. So what happened for me was a friend of mine lent me some herbs and I thought, I know, I'll make myself one of those sleep remedies that people used to really like in my clinic. And I took it, and for the first time in months, I slept. Like I literally took it, went to sleep, woke up 8 hours later and went, wow, that stuff's fantastic. I was genuinely surprised. So then I walked my son to school, and I remember that day just having lots more joy and just a general kind of happiness. You all know that when you haven't had a good night's sleep, the next day is harder. Half of you are probably super tired right now because you didn't go to bed early enough last night, right? And so today is just going to be harder, right? So when you've had a good night's sleep, the day is much nicer and it's more fun. So anyway, I was walking to school with my son and we were having a really good time and laughing, and then I dropped him off and I got back to the office. I'd created a home office for myself, and about 10 o'clock that morning, a light bulb went off and I thought, oh my gosh, I'm not the only one lying awake right now having trouble sleeping. I'm not the only one freaking out. I mean, even people that have got money were worrying about losing the batch or losing the second house or whatever, right? So people were being affected at all sorts of levels with this global financial crisis. And I thought, maybe this is my way that I can stay in business doing what I love, which is natural medicine and helping people, and then make money for myself and create a future for my family. So I got out some marketing notes, and I'd been to an Auckland Business Chamber marketing conference actually just a year or so earlier, and I'd filed those marketing notes aside and I got them out. And on Word, because I didn't have Illustrator or any fancy software, on the Word, on the computer, I put together an ad that had every cheesy but highly effective marketing technique known to mankind. So I put a catchy question heading, do you have trouble sleeping? I put my picture with a money back guarantee. I had a limited time offer. I had a testimonial. I literally had about 15 different marketing techniques all in that ad because I was really desperate and really determined for it to work. And I thought, if I just, look, the experts say that these techniques work, so I'm going to use them. And that's a really basic piece of advice I think that we should all remember. Like, if something is proven and we know it works, then don't be afraid to go with it. So anyway, put my ad together. I put it in a publication called The Aucklander, which was actually an insert in the New Zealand Herald on Thursdays. It's not around anymore because it's coming up 10 years since all of this happened for me. They had 4 different divisions. They had West, East, North and Central. So the Central one covered the suburbs of Ponsonby, St Mary's Bay, and then it swung around Parnell, Remuera, Meadowbank, Ōrākei, etc. You see where I'm going with that. Now, which suburb or which publication do you think I put my ad in? Yeah, the one with the money. Yes. If you want customers, you need people that have got money, right? And I was thinking, okay, these people have got money, plus they're also worrying about money, so they may be the people that are laying awake at night time worrying just like I was, right? So think about your demographic when you're putting your campaign together, right? So sure enough, I put the ad in the paper. I didn't even have the $120 that it took to pay for the ad, but I knew that I could pay it off at $20 a week if I had to, and I knew they wouldn't bankrupt me over a small ad, right? So I took a punt, but it was a calculated guess because I'd put all of that effort into the ad, and I knew I had the right product, and I knew my product worked. That was really important to me. So I put the ad in the paper, and the phone rang 16 times that day. When you consider the average price of my sale, you'll be quite surprised. I was selling 2 bottles of a completely unknown sleep remedy brand to people that had never seen it before, and the minimum they had to spend was $112.50. And I got 16 calls. And so I ran the ad again and again and again, right? So that's how Sleep Drops started. I started with that one ad, with one product. I had one hero product. I now have 20 products, but for the first 3 years, we only had 7 products. But that first product, I chose to launch the product that would grab the most people's attention. So now we've got Sleep Drops for babies, Sleep Drops for kids, Sleep Drops for adults. We've got a sleep supplement that deep restorative sleep stops people waking up. We've got products for the older generation, for menopause and for men, all sorts of different products. But at that time, I just launched with one product, and that was Sleep Drops for adults, because that's for anyone who's having trouble sleeping over 12. Right? So you see how I went for the product that would have the biggest reach, so that hopefully I would get the most attention. So before I came today, I was thinking about, why it's worked for me. I mean, obviously it's been a lot of hard work, a massive roller coaster, lots of sacrifices, not just for myself, but also for my family. And nothing is ever smooth in business. And one thing someone said to me a few years ago when I was going through a little bit of a tough time is they said, business is always like a roller coaster, but as long as you're still saying woo-hoo at the top of the ride, then you know you're doing the right thing. And I think that's a really important point, because I truly love my job and I have a lot of fun doing it. And even when it's really, really stressful and I think, oh, I should just quit and go and get a job, I think, okay, but actually I'm still on the roller coaster and I'm still saying woohoo. So I hope you guys are going to have lots of fun with your business. Enjoy it. Now, I wanted to think about what are the things that have helped it work for me, so that at least I can share some kind of gems. And even if you just get one idea that stays with you, then at least I haven't wasted your time, right? So many things present themselves in your journey in entrepreneurship. Many things can get in your way as an obstacle or a wall, And you have to work out how to go through them, over them, round them, under them. And I think it's something that as Kiwis, we have this real tenacity. Like we have we've got the number 8 wire mentality that everybody refers to, right? Which is a reference back to our farming days when they could make anything out of fence wire. It's that same kind of mentality. As business owners, we have to make magic happen with really limited resources a lot of the time, right? So, and I think that sheer determination can get you really far in life. If you love your product and what you're developing and you're having fun with your friends doing this at school, by the way, I was one of you guys, which is kind of funny. I went to a conference just like this over the North Shore at the wharf. Okay, clearly impressive. Okay, so they are alive. Okay, good. Okay, so many things will present themselves as obstacles to you. One of them is lack of money, right? Lack of funding. So you're going to have to think about how you can grow it. I certainly had to be really creative, and I often referred to our growth as crawling along on your hands and knees and pulling yourself forward by your fingernails. It is hard work. You've got to be determined and not give up. Lack of money's definitely been the biggest problem starting as an underfunded person, but also, being a female. And I don't want to put you girls off, because being in business is amazing, but unfortunately male chauvinism is alive and well, even in Auckland City. And there's been instances where I've been up for funding like other men and not got it. And I know that it's simply because I'm a woman. And I've often lamented the fact that if I was in America, I would have a $100 million company right now. But because I'm a female in Auckland, I'm only a 10% of that, right? It's hard. So you do have to persevere. And we have grown, even despite these obstacles. So I thought about, why is it? What's the key little bits of magic that have helped me get through? So for me, I think the biggest thing that I've had to hold on to that's kept me going is that I truly, truly believe in my product. I absolutely love the fact that my products help make people's lives better. And I know that every aspect of their life and their happiness and their health is better and improved from taking my products. And I think if you've got something that you're marketing that you really love, then that's going to help you. And that might not be the case now for the business that you're working in, but it might be for the next one. So just hold on to that. The other thing that's going to help keeping you motivated is your why. Apple did this whole, what's the difference between Apple and Samsung? And it was their why, it was their design and the motivation behind why they made the apps and the technology do what it does, right? And that's the same for me. There's been times where it's been super tough and I've had to really think about what's my why, and that's got me out of bed on the days when I just really didn't want to get out. So you need to make sure that your mission is really bloody cool, in a nutshell, right? Make it something that makes you enthusiastic, and then make sure that it's realistic. Is your mission realistic? Is the product that you want to sell actually something that's going to add value to the world? The other thing you need is a whole lot of luck, right? You'll never be 100% ready to do any particular part of the business, but you do have to do your planning, and you do have to make careful considerations. But then honestly, you've just got to give it a go. After I started selling my sleep drops, right? First I did the ad, then I put some ads on the radio, and I developed a website, of course. And what I wanted to do was prove that I could take these products that I'd developed in my naturopathic clinic, and I could sell them direct to the public via the website, and I could see whether, even if I'm not there in front of people giving them really clear instructions, whether they could just buy the product from the website and they'd take it and it would still work. Because you do have to market research and test your product, right? So I did that for 3 years, and the sales went up and up and up and up. And then finally it got to a point where we just kind of had momentum, and people were really loving them, and they were asking for them to be in different places. They were asking for them to be in stores. And I'd crunched all the numbers and worked out that if I put them into stores, I would lose a whole lot of my profit and a whole lot of my margin, right? So it meant that I had to be certain that when I put them in stores, the volumes would increase enough to compensate for that lack of profit. Are you with me? Right? So there's 1,100 stores in New Zealand, and it's actually really tricky to get into them. One of the other points I raise later is that naivety gets you a long way, but I think it's a good idea to mention it now. Because I hadn't really become an expert in the retail model, I didn't realize all of the barriers that were in my way. And sometimes that naivety can get you further, right? So instead of going and visiting Green Cross head office, who are the guys that own Unichem and Life Pharmacy, they're like the big co-op, instead of going and seeing them and doing an official pitch and asking permission if I can please be put on their shelf and agreeing to all of their exorbitant terms such as compulsory marketing co-op and rebates or kickbacks that you give them every month and all of these other chunks of money that they steal off you, I didn't even bother asking them if they'd put us on the shelf. I just switched all of my radio ads from saying buy from sleepdrops.co.nz to buy in store. So I just drove thousands of people into stores when I didn't even have any stores. Okay, now you're all thinking, what? Are you crazy? That's mad, right? No, it's genius, because you know what I did then? I followed up by sending in a rep team who walked in the door and said, oh, hi, I'm here, I'm representing Sleep Drops. And all of the stores were like, oh, thank goodness, we've had all these people coming and asking for your product. And they're like, would you like to stock it? And they're like, yes, we would. So it was really a matter of me in a very guerrilla marketing kind of way saying, you will stock my product. Right? And they did. And so what happened was we were the fastest launch in New Zealand retail history of an unknown brand. Like within 8 months, we were in every single pharmacy and health store in the country, which is unheard of, right? But that's the kind of thing you can get away with if you're a bit naive. And in my mind, it was just a fun way to get them in. It was only 3 years later when we realised that we'd been #1 brand in New Zealand for 2 years in a row, and I hadn't even known about it because I couldn't afford to buy the data, that we realised we probably should have gone through these official channels and sat down and asked permission and all of these other things that I just didn't bother doing. So I'm not recommending you break laws or anything like that, but I'm just saying in business, if you don't know exactly the rules, then you can get away with a little bit more, right? And sometimes it works out like it did for me. It's actually a really cool story because I launched in November of 2012, and November's a really terrible time to launch into pharmacy because all the pharmacy budgets are already allocated to perfumes and makeup and presents ready for Christmas. And so no one was anticipating a new brand coming on the market, and I just kind of caught them unaware. Worked out okay. My other point is look at collaboration. Like for me, I find business really the most rewarding and entertaining when I'm working with clever people who can add value to what I'm doing or might have another angle that I haven't thought of or more experience than I have. I think you need to think about that as an individual, like how can you collaborate with other people, but how can you get people to collaborate with you? So individually, as a team, as a group, as a company. There's all sorts of people that you meet along the way and you just never know what that meeting's going to turn into. So always take the meeting. Someone says, hey, can I have coffee with you? It's actually quite tricky because I'm super busy now and I get people saying, can I have coffee? Can I have coffee? And there's a part of me that's like, oh crikey, you know, that's really stressful. But invariably they're super nice people and you just never know when that's going to turn into something really fabulous. Like for example, at the moment we've got this really cool collaboration that's coming together with one of the world's largest sleep tech companies. But the reason that conversation's happening right now is because 4 years ago, when we were a relatively small, unknown brand, one sleep physiologist, a sleep physiologist are the people that measure brain waves and diagnose whether you've got full-blown sleep disorders. Anyway, there was a guy in Auckland called Tim Stevenson who was really quite progressive, and he liked what I was doing with sleep drops. He liked the whole holistic approach to helping people sleep, and he rang up and said, hey, can we have a meeting? And I said yes, and he was a super nice guy, and we just kind of kept in touch. Nothing happened for 4 years, right? Technically that meeting could be deemed potentially a waste of time, but it wasn't, because guess what? 2 years ago he got bought out by ResMed, a $16 billion sleep technology company, and now he's head of New Zealand and Australia channel, and guess whose practitioner range he wants to put in all their sleep clinics? How cool is that? And I just got a new building in January after doing crowdfunding and all sorts of other ways to raise money, because I was getting held back from lack of funding. And in one end of the building, I'm actually creating the first ever integrative sleep and wellness centre for New Zealand. So it's going to have naturopaths and doctors and yoga and all sorts, and amazing sleep pods where you can climb inside and do meditations and sleeps and things. Anyway, last week, this guy, Tim, and his operations manager turned up and came through my sleep clinic. It's not quite finished yet. And he said to me at the end of it, ResMed, who's the company I'm talking about, multi-billion-dollar company, 2 years ago made a decision to become a sleep wellness company, and they put a plan together using their millions and millions of dollars of resources, and they designed what would be a perfect integrative sleep clinic, and I have created exactly what their team came up with just me on my little budget. So it's going to work out really well, because all their international execs are coming to Auckland in a couple of weeks, and I'm going to be able to pitch it to them. Okay? Whether it works out or not, it doesn't matter. I hope it will, but what I'm trying to get the point across is 4 years ago I took a meeting and I stayed in contact with someone just by being nice and friendly and polite, and now 4 years later it could be the most exciting thing that ever happens to me. My page is turned off because I was talking too much. Marketing is super important. My company's called Sleep Drops. Simple, easy name. It's got to play on words because we all drop off to sleep, right? It's something that people can remember. Make sure you have a name or a product that people can remember. My first company was called New Zealand Health Shop. I thought I was so clever. Wow, how did I get that? I said to myself, yeah, New Zealand Health Shop. Yeah, that's a great name. That's going to be fabulous. Guess what? No one could remember it because it was too generic. It was descriptive. It was, when you put it into Google, it would come up with every other every other health product in the country. So make sure you've got a good name that people can remember. Marketing is super important, but great branding is no band-aid for a crappy product. You do need to have a good product. If you've got a good product, it will sell itself. So you have to develop your idea and then develop your marketing around that. And you have to have a unique point of view. And if you're doing something really good, people will copy you. I've been copied. I felt like totally betrayed and violated. And whenever I complained to anyone about it, other people would be like, well, that's what happens when you play with the big boys. It's like it's supposed to be an honor for other people to copy your ideas. Personally, I think it's really bad practice. Don't copy other people's ideas. Come up with your own. Make the world better. Have some pride. Copying other people is just lame. But if other people do copy you, make sure that you zig and you zag. So when they do something, you do something cooler. Stay on your toes. And I've been given the signal to stop. So I'm going to stop there, and hopefully you got something out of that, guys. Thank you.